The envelope was elegant, silver paper, tied with a satin bow, but it felt like a loaded gun in my hands. The weight of it sent a chill up my spine, a silent warning I didn't yet understand. Just moments ago, laughter had filled the air, the glow of candles dancing in my mother's eyes. I had dared to believe this birthday would be different, that I was safe here, with them. I wasn't. I pulled the ribbon, the knot slipping away like a whisper of deceit. The paper tore. My breath hitched. Notice of eviction! The words stared back at me, bold and merciless. A sharp silence sliced through the room, the celebration suffocating under the weight of what I held. My mother's smile faltered. My cousin Cassandra sipped her wine, watching me like a cat that had just cornered its prey. My brother Nathaniel looked away, guilt carved into his face. I felt the walls closing in. My own family had done this. And just like that, my birthday became the day they betrayed me. "Open it, dear. We're all so excited for you to see what's inside," my mother had urged, her eyes twinkling with what I now realize wasn't joy, but anxiety. The fancy envelope had seemed innocent enough, wrapped in silver paper with a delicate bow. The living room of my childhood home, the one I had spent the last 5 years renovating, was filled with familiar faces. My cousin, Cassandra, sat perched on the armrest of the sofa, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. My brother, Nathaniel, stood by the fireplace, hands shoved deep into his pockets, avoiding my gaze. "Come on, Ellie, we haven't got all day," Cassie had chirped, her voice honey-sweet. I remember thinking how odd it was that she was dressed so formally for a simple family gathering. As I tore open the envelope, birthday cake still sweet on my tongue, the legal document inside made my stomach drop. Notice of eviction stared back at me in bold, unforgiving letters. "What is this?" My voice came out barely above a whisper. "Margaret?" "Theodore?" My mother's face crumpled. "Sweetheart, we've been trying to find the right time to tell you." "Tell me what?" I stood up, the paper trembling in my hands. "That you're kicking me out of my own home? The home I've poured my savings into, my heart into." Cassie cleared her throat. "Eleanor, be reasonable. The house was never officially yours. The deed is still in your parents' names, and they've decided it's time for a change." "A change?" I spun to face her. "What do you know about this?" "I'm just trying to help the family make the best financial decision," she said, smoothing her designer skirt. "The market's hot right now." "The market?" I laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. "This is my home, not some investment property." My brother finally spoke up. "Ellie, maybe we should discuss this privately." "No." I slammed the paper down on the coffee table, making the cake plates rattle. "I want answers now. Margaret? Theodore? Why are you doing this?" My father wouldn't meet my eyes. "There have been concerns about your ability to maintain the property properly. Isabella has shown us some concerning documentation." "Documentation?" I felt like I was drowning. "What documentation?" "I've done nothing but improve this house. Look around you. New hardwood floors, updated kitchen, restored Victorian details. I did all of that. With questionable contractors," Cassandra interjected softly. "And there are the noise complaints from neighbors, the unauthorized modifications." "That's absolutely false!" My voice cracked. I turned to my best friend Harper, who stood frozen in the corner. "Pa, tell them! You've been here through all the renovations!" Harper stepped forward, her face fierce. "Everything Vivian's done has been by the book. I've seen all the permits myself." But my family's expressions remained unchanged. My mother reached for my hand. "Sweetie, You have 30 days to... I jerked away from her touch. 30 days? To leave my home? On my birthday? The room started spinning. How long have you been planning this? Cassie straightened her blazer. I think we should all calm down and discuss this rationally. The decision's been made, Eleanor. Fighting it will only make things harder. Looking at her face, that perfectly composed expression, void of any real concern, I knew the truth. This had never been my home in their eyes. I was just a tenant, and today, my lease had expired. The composed mask of false concern, something clicked. This wasn't just about the house. This was calculated, planned. The formal outfit, the documentation she'd mentioned, the way she'd positioned herself as the voice of reason, it all lined up. Get out, I whispered. Then louder, everyone, get out! Eleanor, my mother started, but I didn't want to hear it. One by one, they filed out, leaving only Harper behind. As the door closed behind my family, I collapsed onto the couch, the eviction notice mocking me from the coffee table. Harper sat beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. This isn't over, Ellie. Something's not right here, and we're going to figure it out. I wiped my eyes, anger replacing the shock. You're right. Cassie's behind this somehow. She's always wanted this house ever since we were kids. I straightened up, a new determination flooding through me. Looking around at my beloved home, at the walls I'd painted, the fixtures I'd restored, the memories I'd built, I made a promise to myself. This wouldn't be the last birthday I'd celebrate here, not if I had anything to say about it. The morning after my disastrous birthday, I sat at my kitchen counter, staring at my phone. 17 missed calls from Margaret, 5 from Nathaniel, none from Vanessa, of course. You need to eat something, Harper said, sliding a plate of toast in front of me. She'd stayed the night, sleeping on my couch like we used to do in college. You can't fight this on an empty stomach. I pushed the plate away. I can't eat. I need to figure out what Vanessa's been telling my parents. My hands shook as I pulled up my mother's contact information. I'm calling her. Put it on speaker, Harper said, settling beside me. Margaret answered on the first ring. Eleanor, thank goodness. We've been so worried. Save it. I cut her off. I want to know exactly what Cassie has been saying about me. A heavy sigh crackled through the speaker. Honey, it's not just what Cassie said. She showed us documentation, unauthorized construction, complaints from the neighborhood association. That's impossible. I slammed my hand on the counter. I have every permit, every approval, right here in my files. Who specifically complained? Well, I don't have the actual complaints in front of me. Vanessa handled all of that. Of course she did. I laughed bitterly. And did you bother to verify any of it? To ask me about it before ambushing me on my birthday? Silence stretched between us. Margaret, Cassie said you'd deny everything, she finally replied, her voice small. She said you've been struggling financially, that you've been cutting corners. I want copies of everything, I demanded. Every document, every complaint, everything Cassie showed you today. Eleanor, please understand. No, you understand. That house is my life. I've put every penny I have into it, and I'm not leaving without a fight. I hung up before she could respond. Harper squeezed my shoulder. That's my girl. Now what? Now we gather evidence. I grabbed my laptop. I need proof that Vanessa's lying. My phone buzzed. A text from Nathaniel. Meet me at Carlos's Coffee in 30. Need to talk. 20 minutes later, I walked into Carlos's, spotting my brother in our usual corner booth. His face was drawn, guilty. You knew, I accused, sliding into the seat across from him. You knew what they were planning. Nathaniel ran a hand through his hair. I found out yesterday morning. Margaret and Theodore swore me to secrecy. Said Cassie had proof you were in trouble. And you believed her? Of course not. He leaned forward. Look, something weird is going on. Last week, I overheard Vanessa on the phone talking about property values and development opportunities in the neighborhood. My heart stopped. Development opportunities? Yeah, and get this, her fiancé, Dominic? His family owns that new luxury condo complex downtown. The pieces started falling into place. Our street was one of the last historic areas in town, prime for development. My house sat on the largest lot. She wants to sell it to developers, I whispered. That's why she's doing this. Nathaniel nodded. It makes sense, doesn't it? She convinced Margaret and Theodore that you were a liability, made it seem like they were doing the responsible thing by selling. But really, she's just lining up a deal. Anger surged through me. She's manipulating them, and they're letting her. Nathaniel looked down at his coffee, guilt shadowing his face. Ellie, I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to be a part of it, but you didn't stop it either, I said, my voice sharp. He sighed. I know, and I'm sorry. But now that I know what she's up to, I'll help you. I narrowed my eyes. Why should I trust you now? Because I'm giving you the inside track, he said. Cassie has a meeting with a developer tomorrow. If you really want to fight this, you need to be there. A plan was already forming in my mind. I'll be there, I said. Harper had been right all along. This wasn't over, not even close. Here's the rewritten content, ensuring the original meaning is preserved, punctuation is correctly applied, and the word count reaches exactly 700 words. I stared at him, my stomach sinking. Margaret and Theodore, he nodded. They think they're protecting you from financial ruin, but Isabella is playing them. She's convinced them that selling is the only way to save you from yourself. My phone buzzed again. An email from Margaret with attachments. I opened it, scanning quickly, my pulse racing. I turned the screen to Nathaniel. These documents, I said, flipping through them. The letterhead is wrong. The permit numbers don't match my records. She forged them, I realized, my voice rising. Keep your voice down, Nathaniel warned, glancing around. Vanessa's got friends everywhere. I don't care, I shot back. This is proof she's lying. I stood up, suddenly energized. I need to show Margaret and Theodore. Wait! Nathaniel grabbed my wrist. Cassie's wedding to Sebastian is in 2 weeks. Everyone will be there. Family, friends, business associates. If you're going to expose her, that's your chance to do it properly. I sank back into my seat, my mind racing. 2 weeks to gather evidence, to prove she was trying to steal my home for her fiancé's development company. I'll help, Nathaniel said firmly. So will Harper. But we have to be smart about this. I nodded, determination replacing despair. Isabella thought she'd won, that I'd just roll over and accept this. But she had no idea what I was capable of. Walking home, I called Harper. Hey, remember that friend of yours who works at the city planning office? We need to talk to her, now. The game was on, and this time, I was playing to win. The planning office smelled like stale coffee and printer ink. Harper's friend Rachel pulled another file from the cabinet, adding it to the growing stack on her desk. These are all the development proposals for your neighborhood from the past 6 months, she said, keeping her voice low despite the empty office, including 3 from Valum Development Group. Sebastian's company, I muttered, flipping through the pages. My hands froze on a familiar sketch. This is my house. Harper leaned over my shoulder. Look at the date. This was filed 2 months ago, I whispered. Before the eviction notice, before any of this started. Rachel glanced nervously at the door. There's something else. These signatures here. She pointed to the bottom of the document. Your parents' names authorizing the preliminary survey. My stomach lurched. They've been planning this for months. Harper grabbed my arm, pointing to another name. Look who notarized it. The name jumped off the page. Marcus Quinn, I read, my voice cold. Vanessa's father. That sneaky little... I stopped as footsteps echoed in the hallway. Rachel quickly gathered the files, shoving them back into the cabinet. I've got copies at my desk, she whispered. I'll email them to you tonight. We barely made it out before someone entered the office. In the parking lot, I leaned against my car, trying to steady my breathing. We need to talk to Dominic, Harper said. Maybe he doesn't know what Vanessa is doing. He has to know, I said. His company filed the proposals. My phone rang. Nathaniel. Sis, you need to get to Margaret and Theodore's. Now. What's wrong? Vanessa's here, he said. With some contractor talking about renovation plans. They're acting like they already own the place. I was already in my car. I'm coming. 15 minutes later, I stormed through my parents' front door. Isabella's voice drifted from the kitchen, smooth as honey. The whole street will benefit from the modernization. Property values will soar. Over my dead body, I announced, making them all jump. Isabella recovered first, her smile never wavering. Eleanor, we were just discussing the neighborhood's future. You mean your future, your fiancé's future. I slapped the development proposals on the kitchen table. When were you going to tell everyone about Val's plans? My mother's face paled. What is she talking about, Vanessa? Don't listen to her, Cassie said quickly. She's just upset about the eviction. Show them, I demanded. Show them the real reason you want this house gone. The contractor cleared his throat awkwardly. I should go. Stay, Vanessa commanded. Eleanor's just causing drama as usual, always so emotional about everything. Emotional? I laughed bitterly. You forged documents. You lied to my parents. You're trying to steal my home for your fiancé's development project. That's enough, my father shouted. Cassie's been nothing but helpful. Helpful? I grabbed the proposals, throwing them in front of him. Look at the dates. Look at the signatures. She's been planning this for months. My mother picked up the papers with trembling hands. These aren't the documents you showed us, Cassie. Because they're fake, Cassie snapped. Eleanor's desperate. She'll say anything. I have copies from the city planning office, I cut in. Official copies. Want to see them? For the first time, Cassie's composure cracked. You went through official records? And I found everything. The fake complaints, the forged permits, the development plans. It's all there. The contractor stood up. Miss Shelton, if there's some kind of legal issue... There's no issue, she said through gritted teeth. Everything's fine. My phone buzzed. An email from Rachel with the promised documents. I held up my phone triumphantly. Want to see the proof? It's right here. Cassie's face hardened. You have no idea what you're doing, Eleanor. No idea who you're dealing with. No, you have no idea who you're dealing with. I shot back. I turned to my parents. Check your emails. I'm sending you everything, every lie, every manipulation, every secret meeting with Valram Development. Cassie? My mother's voice was small. Is this true? But Cassie was already heading for the door, the contractor trailing behind her. At the threshold, she turned back. This isn't over, Eleanor. Not by a long shot. After she left, silence filled the kitchen. My father stared at the documents, his face ashen. "We should have asked you," he finally said. "Should have verified." "Yes, you should have." I gathered the papers. "But now you know the truth. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" I left them there, surrounded by evidence of their own misplaced trust. In my car, I called Harper. "Phase 1 complete," I said. "Now we go after Sebastian." Finding Sebastian proved easier than I expected. He was at his usual lunch spot, a trendy cafe downtown, with his sister, Danielle. I smoothed my blazer and approached their table, Harper close behind me. "Mind if we join you?" I asked, not waiting for an answer before sliding into the empty chair. Sebastian's fork clattered against his plate. "Eleanor, what are you doing here?" Funny story. I was just at the city planning office, looking at some very interesting documents about my house. Danielle's eyes narrowed. "Your house? The Victorian that Vanessa mentioned?" "The same one your brother's company plans to demolish," I said, watching Sebastian's face carefully. "Demolish?" Danielle turned to her brother. "Val, what is she talking about?" Sebastian dabbed his mouth with a napkin. "This isn't the place." "It's exactly the place," I interrupted, pulling out the development proposals. "Your company filed these 2 months ago, before the eviction notice, before all of Vanessa's lies." Danielle snatched the papers, her face darkening as she read. "You're planning to tear down the entire street? Replace it with condos?" "It's a sound business decision," Sebastian defended. "The neighborhood's undervalued." "It's my home," I cut in, "and Cassie's been manipulating my family to get it." "They said your parents were willing sellers," Sebastian said, but I caught the uncertainty in his voice. Harper leaned forward. "They were willing because Vanessa showed them forged documents, claiming Ellie was mismanaging the property. She lied to everyone." Danielle pushed her plate away, disgust evident. "Is this why you're rushing the wedding? To close this deal? The timing is convenient." He admitted. "Convenient?" I laughed bitterly. "You're destroying people's homes, their histories." "Progress requires sacrifice," Sebastian started. But Danielle cut him off. This requires deception, and I won't be part of it." She stood up. Gathering her things, Danielle stood abruptly. "Count me out of the wedding party." "Danielle, wait!" Sebastian called after his sister, but she was already storming out. I smiled sweetly. "Trouble in paradise?" "You have no right to interfere in my business dealings," he hissed, "and you have no right to my house." I stood up. "By the way, I've sent copies of everything to the City Ethics Board. They're very interested in how Valram obtained those preliminary approvals." The color drained from his face. "You're bluffing." "Try me." I dropped a business card on the table. "That's my lawyer's number. Use it." Outside, Danielle was waiting by my car. "I want to help," she said. "Why should I trust you?" I asked. "Because I've watched Vanessa manipulate my brother for months. Because I've seen the way she operates." Danielle's eyes flashed. "And because I have access to Valram's internal files." Harper grabbed my arm. "Ellie, this could be huge." "What's in it for you?" I asked Danielle, narrowing my eyes. "Justice, and the satisfaction of watching Cassie's perfect plan implode." She pulled out her phone. "Starting with these emails between her and my brother, dating back 6 months." I scanned the messages, my heart racing. There it was. Explicit discussion of their scheme to pressure my parents, to force the sale, to fast-track the development. "This is exactly what we need," Harper breathed. "There's more," Danielle said. "Board meetings, private conversations, financial arrangements. I can get you everything." My phone buzzed. A text from Nathaniel. Margaret and Theodore want to talk. They've seen the evidence. Looks like the tide is turning, I told Danielle. But we need to move fast. The wedding's in 10 days. Perfect timing for everything to fall apart. She smiled grimly. I'll send you what I have tonight. As Danielle walked away, Harper turned to me. Are you sure about this? Using her? She's using us too, I pointed out. But right now, we want the same thing. My phone buzzed again. An unknown number. The message made my blood run cold. Back off now, or you'll regret it. Some things are worth more than a house. S. Harper read over my shoulder. She's threatening you. She's desperate, I corrected, saving the message as evidence. And desperate people make mistakes. I headed toward my car, determination fueling every step. Let's go see my parents. It's time to show them exactly who they've been protecting. The pieces were falling into place faster than I'd hoped, but Cassie's threat lingered in my mind, a warning that this fight was far from over. And something told me the worst was yet to come. I woke to the sound of breaking glass. Jumping out of bed, I rushed downstairs to find my front window shattered. A brick lay among the shards, a note wrapped around it. Final warning. My hands shook as I called the police. While waiting, I texted Harper and Nathaniel. They arrived before the officers did. This has gone too far, Nathaniel said, examining the brick. You need to be careful, Ellie. I'm not backing down now. I handed the note to the police officer who was taking my statement. This is connected to a larger situation. I have documentation. Just file a restraining order, the officer suggested, looking bored. Not much we can do without proof of who threw it. After they left, Harper helped me board up the window. At least we have Danielle's evidence now, she said. Those emails she sent last night are devastating. Speaking of which, I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from my mother. I need to go see them, I said. They've had time to process everything. I'm coming with you, Nathaniel insisted. 20 minutes later, we sat in our parents' living room. Margaret's eyes were red from crying. We've been such fools, she whispered. All those documents Cassandra showed us. We wanted to believe she was helping. The development plan, Theodore added, his voice heavy. We had no idea they planned to demolish the whole street. We thought they were just renovating. Vanessa knew exactly what buttons to push, I said. She played on your fears, made me out to be the problem, so you'd trust her over me. My father ran a hand down his face. She made it seem like we had no other option. You always had an option, I said firmly. You just didn't ask the right questions. Margaret reached for my hand, but I pulled back. Eleanor, please, I stood up. I don't know if I can forgive you yet, but right now, we have a bigger problem. We need to stop her before she finalizes this deal. Theodore nodded slowly. What do we do? I exhaled. We expose everything, publicly. We go to the press, the city officials, the developers. We show them that every approval she obtained was fraudulent. Margaret wiped her eyes. She'll fight back. Let her. My voice was steady. We have the truth, and now we use it. Harper nodded in agreement. So, what's next? I checked my phone. Another message from Danielle. Got more files. This is bigger than we thought. Call me. I met Nathaniel's gaze. We bring her down. Your concerns about me made you think I was in trouble? I asked, my voice tight. She's been manipulating this family for years. Nathaniel nodded. Remember when she convinced you to give her grandma's jewelry instead of Ellie? Margaret's face crumpled. She said you didn't want it, that you thought it was old-fashioned. I never said that, I swallowed hard. Just like I never made unauthorized changes to the house, never had complaints from neighbors. "We know that now," Theodore said. "We've talked to everyone on the street. No one ever complained. In fact, they all love what you've done with the place." My phone buzzed. "Danielle, emergency. Meet me at Riverside Park now." "I have to go." I stood up. "But first, are you with me on this? Really with me?" Margaret squared her shoulders. "We'll do whatever it takes to make this right." At the park, Danielle paced near the fountain, her face pale. "Cassandra knows I helped you," she said, her voice shaking. "She's threatening to reveal something about my past to the board of Valram." "What? Something serious?" "A mistake I made years ago. It could ruin my career." She ran her hands through her hair. I can't risk it." "Hey," I grabbed her shoulders. "Whatever it is, it can't be worse than what she's doing now." "You don't understand. My whole life could fall apart." "Then let it." The words came out harder than I intended. "Sometimes you have to lose everything to do the right thing." Danielle's eyes filled with tears. "Easy for you to say. You're just fighting for a house." "No," I said firmly. "I'm fighting for justice, for truth, for every person Vanessa has ever manipulated or hurt." I softened my tone. "Including you." She wiped her eyes. "There's something else. I overheard Sebastian on the phone. They're moving up the timeline. They want to close the deal right after the wedding. That's in a week, less. The rehearsal dinner is in 3 days. Danielle straightened up. "You're right. I can't let her win. Not again." My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "Hope you enjoyed the brick. Next time, it won't be your window. S." I showed Danielle the message. Her face hardened. "She's really losing it." "Good," I said. "The more desperate she gets, the more mistakes she'll make." "The rehearsal dinner," Danielle said suddenly. "All the investors will be there. The board members, the family. Perfect time to expose everything. But Cassie will be expecting something. She'll be prepared." I smiled grimly. "Then we'll have to be better prepared. I need every document, every email, every piece of evidence you can get. And I need them tonight." Danielle nodded. "I'll have them to you in 2 hours." As she walked away, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Harper. "Your mom just called. Cassandra's at their house. She's crying, saying you're trying to ruin her life. Your parents aren't buying it, but she's putting on quite a show." I texted back. "Let her perform. In 3 days, she'll have a real reason to cry." The stakes were higher now, the threats more serious. But with each desperate move Vanessa made, she only proved how close we were to bringing her down. The countdown to the rehearsal dinner had begun. The day before the rehearsal dinner, I sat in my lawyer's office, surrounded by stacks of evidence. Olivia, my attorney, flipped through the documents with growing interest. "These emails between Vanessa and Valram are damning," she said. "And the forged documents. That's criminal." "But is it enough?" I asked. "To stop the development?" "Absolutely. To press charges? Probably." She leaned forward. "But are you sure you want to do this at the rehearsal dinner?" "It's perfect timing," I said. "All the investors will be there, plus the entire family." My phone buzzed. Another threat from Vanessa. Last chance to back down. "Remember, I know about Miami." Olivia caught my expression. "What's wrong?" "She's trying to blackmail me now," I said, showing her the text. "But the Miami thing, it's nothing. Just a spring break mistake from college that she thinks she can use against me." "Document everything," Olivia advised, handing me a USB drive. "I've organized all the evidence here, including the police report about the brick." I took the drive, gripping it tightly. Then it's time to finish this. You sure you don't want private security? I'll be fine, Nathaniel. Harper will be with me tomorrow night. Outside the office, I found Danielle waiting in her car. Get in. There's something you need to see. She drove us to Val's office building, parking in the underground garage. Sebastian and Vanessa are in a board meeting upstairs. But look at this. She pulled out her tablet, showing me security footage from earlier that day. Isabella was arguing with someone in the garage, her father. Turn up the volume, I said. I can't keep covering for you, her father was saying. The notary stamps, the forged documents. It's too much risk. Daddy, please, just one more day. After the rehearsal dinner, it won't matter anymore. What's happening after the rehearsal dinner? I asked Danielle. I don't know, but they've booked a private room at the restaurant. Invitation only, after the main event. My phone rang. Ellie, you need to get home now, Harper said. Someone's been in your house. I broke every speed limit getting back. Harper and Nathaniel were waiting outside. Inside, my breath caught. Every renovation I'd done, every wall I'd painted, every fixture I'd restored had been photographed and marked with bright red X's. They're documenting everything, Nathaniel said quietly. They plan to destroy it all. Harper picked up a business card left on the counter. Look who's handling the demolition. The company name made my blood boil. It belonged to Vanessa's uncle. They're keeping it all in the family, I said bitterly. How did they even get in? Your mom called, Nathaniel said. Cassandra asked to borrow her spare key this morning, said she needed to measure for wedding decorations. And Margaret gave it to her? Number. But when she refused, Vanessa broke down crying, saying you were trying to ruin her special day. Margaret felt guilty and admitted where she keeps the spare. I sank onto the stairs, looking at the red X's everywhere. This was my grandmother's house. I learned to walk on these floors, had my first kiss in that bay window. And you're not going to lose it, Harper said firmly. Tomorrow night, we end this. My phone buzzed. A text from Danielle. Emergency. Cassandra changed the seating arrangements. You're not invited to the private meeting anymore. Doesn't matter, I texted back. We'll do it during the main dinner. More witnesses that way. I spent the rest of the day with Olivia, finalizing our strategy. By nightfall, everything was ready. Lying in bed that night, I heard footsteps on my porch. Grabbing my phone to call the police, I crept to the window. But it was just my mother, leaving something by the door. I opened it to find a small package with a note. Your grandmother wanted you to have this. I should have given it to you years ago. Love, Margaret. Inside was my grandmother's antique locket, the one Vanessa had claimed I didn't want. Opening it, I found a tiny photograph of my grandmother standing proudly in front of the house the day she bought it. My phone lit up with one final threat from Vanessa. Hope you're ready for tomorrow, because I am. I touched the locket, then looked at the red X's marking my walls. Bring it on, I whispered. Tomorrow, everything would change. Either I'd save my home and expose Cassandra's schemes, or I'd lose everything I'd fought for. But looking at my grandmother's proud smile in that old photograph, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going down without a fight. The rehearsal dinner couldn't come soon enough. The room buzzed with nervous energy. Cassandra held court at the main table, resplendent in white, while Sebastian worked the room, charming investors. I sat between Harper and Nathaniel, my grandmother's locket cool against my skin, waiting for the right moment. Look who just arrived, Harper whispered. Olivia, my lawyer, walked in with Danielle. Right on schedule. Cassandra's smile flickered for just a moment before she recovered, rising to greet them. "Danielle, darling, I was worried you wouldn't make it after our disagreement." "Wouldn't miss it," Danielle said coldly. Then she turned to the investors. The assembled guests turned as Danielle spoke. "Have you met Olivia?" she asked, her voice carrying across the room. "She's a fascinating person, specializes in real estate fraud." The room quieted slightly. Sebastian appeared at Cassandra's side, his hand tight on her arm. "Perhaps we should start the toasts," he suggested. "Wonderful idea," I said, standing and raising my glass. Cassandra's face drained of color. "That's not on the program." "Oh, but I insist." I moved to the center of the room. "After all, what kind of cousin would I be if I didn't congratulate you on your achievements?" The room fell silent, all eyes on me. "Eleanor," my mother warned softly. "It's okay, Margaret," I reassured her. "I'm just going to share some interesting documents with everyone." I nodded to Olivia, who began distributing folders to the investors. "Consider it my wedding gift." "Security!" Cassandra called out. But Danielle was already blocking the door. "Let's start with these emails," I continued, my voice strong. "Detailed plans to forge documents, manipulate my family, and steal my home for Val's development project." Sebastian stepped forward. "These are private business matters." "Fraud is never private," Olivia interjected. "Neither is forgery, which brings us to Exhibit B." She held up a set of documents. The falsified complaints and permits, complete with unauthorized notary stamps from Cassandra's father. Cahan's father stood up, his face red. "Now wait just a minute. The ethics board is very interested in your involvement," Olivia added smoothly. "They'll be in touch." "You're ruining everything," Cassandra shrieked, lunging for the folders. But Nathaniel was faster, already passing copies to the board members. "Like you tried to ruin my life?" I asked, stepping forward. "The threats? The brick through my window? The break-in?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sebastian's sister stood up. "The police have been notified," she announced. "About everything." "Val, do something," Cassandra pleaded. But Sebastian was busy reading the documents, his face growing darker with each page. "You told me her family agreed to sell, that everything was legal," he said, his voice tight. "It was just business," Cassandra protested. "A simple property acquisition." "Simple." I pulled out my phone, playing the security footage Danielle had given me. Cassandra's voice filled the room. "After the rehearsal dinner, it won't matter anymore." Sebastian's expression darkened. "What were you planning, Cassandra?" "What happens after dinner?" Her silence was damning. Her father broke it. "The demolition crew is scheduled for midnight," he admitted. We thought if the house was already down." "You were going to destroy my home tonight?" My voice cracked. "While everyone was celebrating your wedding?" The room erupted in chaos. Investors stormed out. Board members huddled in corners. Family members argued loudly. Through it all, Cassandra stood frozen, her perfect world crumbling. "The development deal is off," Sebastian announced, "and so is the wedding." "But the deposits, the contracts," Cassandra's voice was small. "They're void due to fraud," Olivia supplied helpfully, "as is the eviction notice." My mother approached Cassandra slowly. "How could you do this to family?" "Because she never cared about family," I said quietly. "Only power, control, getting what she wants, no matter who she hurts." Cassandra's composure finally broke. "You think you've won? You've ruined everything I worked for." "No." I touched my grandmother's locket. "You did that yourself. Every lie, every scheme, every betrayal, that was all you. The police arrived then, asking questions, taking statements. I watched as Cassandra's carefully constructed facade crumbled completely. "The house is yours," my father said, hugging me tight. "It always was. We forgot what family really means." Later, standing outside the restaurant, Harper squeezed my hand. "How does it feel?" I looked up at the night sky, thinking of my grandmother's photograph. Like justice, like home. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from Danielle. "Board meeting tomorrow. Valrum's pulling out of all neighborhood developments." I smiled. "You did it," Harper said. Justice indeed. But watching Cassandra being escorted away, I knew this wasn't just about justice. This was about reclaiming everything she tried to take. Cassandra sat in the back of the police car, mascara streaking her cheeks. I felt no joy in her destruction, only relief that my home, my family's legacy, was safe at last. The morning sun streamed through my newly repaired window as I sipped coffee on my front porch. The newspaper headline caught my eye. Valrum Development faces investigation. CEO steps down. Below it, a smaller headline. Local woman charged with fraud, criminal conspiracy. My phone rang. "Danielle, have you seen the news?" "Just reading it now. How are you holding up?" "Better than expected," I admitted. "The board appointed me interim CEO. Turns out exposing corruption has its perks." A car pulled into my driveway. My parents. Margaret carried a large box, while Theodore lugged what looked like photo albums. "I'll call you back," I told Danielle. Margaret set the box down carefully. "We've been going through the attic. Found some things that belong here." Inside were pieces of my grandmother's life, her journals, recipes, old letters. Theodore opened one of the albums, pointing to a yellowed photo. "That's her. The day she bought this house. Said it was the proudest moment of her life." "Until you were born," Margaret added softly. "She always wanted you to have it." The screen door creaked open as Harper emerged with more coffee. "Look who just pulled up." A police car parked across the street. Detective Carter approached, holding a document. "Miss Harding, we've recovered some items from Vanessa's office. Things she took from your house." He handed me a folder. "Also thought you should know. She's agreed to a plea deal, full confession." "Thank you," I said, taking the folder. Inside were old photographs she'd stolen years ago, claiming they'd been lost. "The DA wants to know if you'll testify about the harassment," Detective Carter added. I looked at my repaired window, remembering the brick, the threats, the fear. "Yes, I will." He nodded and left. Margaret touched one of the recovered photographs. "Your 5th birthday," she said. "Cassandra was so jealous of your party, she threw cake at you." "We should have seen the signs back then." "We all missed the signs," I said. "But we can't change the past." Jason's truck rumbled up the street, Sebastian surprisingly in the passenger seat. They carried construction supplies. "Before you say anything," Nathaniel called out. He volunteered. Sebastian set down a paint can. "I owe you. We all do. Let me help restore what we almost destroyed." I studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Start with the back porch. It needs new railings." The day unfolded like a healing breath. While Nathaniel and Sebastian worked on repairs, Margaret and I sorted through my grandmother's belongings. Harper organized a neighborhood potluck on the lawn. Even Danielle stopped by, bringing corporate documents showing Val's new commitment to historic preservation. "The board wants to establish a fund," she explained, "to help homeowners restore historic properties instead of demolishing them." Karma works in mysterious ways, Harper mused. As evening approached, neighbors gathered on my lawn, sharing food and stories. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door brought her famous empanadas. "Your grandmother loved these," she told me. "She hosted dinners like this all the time. The house was always full of people, full of life." I touched my locket, thinking of the photograph inside. "Maybe it's time to restart that tradition," I said. Theodore raised his glass. "To new beginnings. And old foundations," Margaret added. My phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. "Finalized. Cassandra's serving time. The house is officially safe." Looking around at my gathered family, friends, and neighbors, I realized something. This house wasn't just walls and windows, not just a property to be saved. It was a home, alive with memories and possibilities. "You know," Harper said, "your birthday's coming up again." "No surprise parties this time," I laughed. "No," she agreed, "but maybe a housewarming to celebrate properly." I watched Nathaniel and Sebastian arguing over paint swatches on the porch. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't worried about what was coming next. I was home,